And it wouldn't happen with political analyst Stephen Lawson at a new time, coming in early, coming in hot, 10:05 here on the Mark Arum Show. Good morning, Stephen. How are you, my friend?
Early for you on a Wednesday, my friend.
Yeah, indeed. So I don't know if you heard the beginning of the show, U.S. Senate candidate, GOP candidate Derek Dooley joined us for a little sit-down interview. Just wanted to get to know Coach Dooley because I really didn't know much about him before he announced his senatorial race.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sounded like a good conversation from what I caught. Everybody that interacts with him one-on-one has positive things to say. Very nice guy. Obviously has a coaching career. And he's sort of hinged his campaign really on that coaching career. Obviously, some people that resonates with, some people it doesn't. But it'll be interesting to kind of see it as he continues to travel the state and meet with people. How that resonates, right, and how he's received. I think it's still a little early, based on some of the polling that we've seen to get a real good feel. But again, as you and I have talked, he does have the backing of Governor Kemp and his political operation.
Yeah, which
I think that will be it's definitely an asset for him.
I didn't ask him this because I didn't want to put him on the spot, but he's coached college football all over the SEC, and we talked about Coach Saban. Is there a scenario? Is there a world in which we start getting like a Nick Saban endorsement on the Senate race here in Georgia? Is that out of the realm of possibility?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's. I don't look. This is Georgia politics.
Yeah.
Nothing's out of the realm of possibility, right? No, I could totally see that. They obviously have a long history. Going back to coaching together, Alabama. Obviously, Coach Dooley coached at the University of Tennessee. That's probably what he's most known for. I don't know how Georgia fans would react to that.
That's a good point.
And maybe that's why they're holding that back. But yeah, I think obviously he's Derek Dooley's certainly leaning into the football history, experience, analogies, and so it's football season. We'll see how that works out.
Go Dogs. I didn't prep you for this because this story came up yesterday. We talked about it. I never heard of this guy, Paul Ingracia.
Yes.
So he was nominated to lead the Office of Special Counsel. He withdrew his nomination after we got a ton of offensive text messages that he sent to a group chat. This on the heels of the young Republicans texting. As a political advisor, I mean, there have to be conversations, not just Republicans, because I'm sure Democrats are having similar off-putting conversations that haven't come to light yet. There's got to be politics 101. Like anything you send in a group chat or an email, just expect that to be released to the public, right? There's got to be some sort of conversation going on right now.
Politics 101, life 101, anything that you put in writing in this day and age, you need to make sure that you are comfortable with that being public, right? In this digital age, this social media age that we live in. Certainly, obviously, the texts from the Republican group chat and then this Paul Ingracia are extremely offensive. There is absolutely no room for any of that. And look, like that's the risk you run when you say things like that. You run the risk of them becoming public, especially when you're in positions of somewhat prominence or in the political sphere. You need to take note, and certainly candidates are not immune to that.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think we're going to see more of that. That tit for tat kind of unearthing of past statements. Right, that's part and parcel of any campaign, but certainly in this social media digital age. That's certainly the case.
And I should mention too, this is actually it's not a text message chain that was revealed, but the main Democrat running for the oyster farmer guy, he's running to take on Susan Collins in Maine for that, what some say might be a vulnerable Senate seat. Former Marine, some stuff came out about him, some posts on Reddit that he made years ago, and a tattoo he got that could be construed as Nazi symbolism. So now he's having to walk this back, and he basically said, I was a Marine. We were somewhere overseas. We got drunk. We got a tattoo. We went to the tattoo parlor. We're like, oh, skull and bones. Let's do that. We're Marines. He didn't know that, if he's telling the truth or not, that there was some sort of tie to Nazi imagery there. So that's now a subject in that Maine Senate race. And he's even said, oh, I'll get it covered up, pleading ignorant. I mean, anything you do from the age of 13 to whenever you run from office is pretty much fair game now.
Yeah, no, it totally is, and obviously that's as candidates right across the country begin to make the decision whether or not they want to run for political office. Like that's the first conversation you have, right, is with your family. But then do a lot of candidates and campaigns do a vulnerability report on themselves, right, to make sure that all of their past statements are above board. And look, that's a reason why a lot of people don't run for political office, right? Is because exactly, yeah, it's one of the smart ones, right?
Yeah.
But even things that we've all said things that we probably regret. But it's to another level, right? When you're running for political office, because that microscope is just so much bigger. But certainly, I think what you're seeing here with these Republican group chats and that example, people are being held to account, and I think that's the right course of action.
And it's the digital age too, which I think is a factor here. So in the Reagan 80s, there were no text messages, emails. If you said something incriminating or wrote something incriminating, it had to be a letter that you'd have to put in the post office and put a stamp. Like the digital age is just. I think that's why I'm kind of immune. So there were no digital cameras when I was in college to catch stupid stuff, and I didn't have those dumb text messages when I was 20 years old. So I might be the last generation. Gen Xers might be the last generation kind of outside of that bubble, but the younger generations, they live on these chats and can say mighty offensive stuff. What was that political show, Deborah, with Kevin Spacey? What was that?
House of Cards?
House of Cards.
House of Cards.
Yeah.
I remember, I think I'm remembering correctly the show. Like they were talking about a would-be candidate, and the political advisor was like, all right, here's a piece of paper. Write down the worst things you've done in your life, and we will go make sure if these will come out and haunt you.
Right.
And now you got to add.
And a lot of times they say keep writing.
Yeah, exactly. Political analyst Stephen Lawson. Burt Jones, I just saw something in the AJC about the tax-free Georgia initiative.
Yeah. So obviously, Burt Jones, candidate for governor, I would say the front runner on the Republican side for governor, has signed this Grover Norquist no tax
How do I know that
pledge.
name? Why do I know Grover
Yeah,
Norquist?
so he's obviously a very well-known economist.
Okay.
He's been in the political sphere, and he's got this pledge that a lot of candidates, sort of a rite of passage, sign pledging that they will not increase taxes under their watch. So Lieutenant Governor Jones, running for governor, has signed that pledge, which is a big deal. It is part and parcel of his campaign, right, that we've talked about to eliminate the state income tax.
So this is separate from that. The Norquist pledge is different.
It is, but I think it's central to his campaign in talking about lowering the cost of living and talking about keeping taxes low and cutting taxes. So this is, look, and that's a potent message for him. We've talked about that, right? Working towards eliminating the state income tax, keeping taxes low. We've talked on the House side next session. There's going to be a big push, I believe, for property tax relief and cutting property taxes. So I think you're seeing these two different approaches to taxes next session. But it's very clear, Mark, we're seeing not just in this healthcare debate, but in economic jobs. Cost of living continues to be the number one driver on people's minds. And I think you're going to see that both next legislative session, but out on the campaign trail in 2026 as well.
And I think this ties into a story, Stephen, we brought up briefly on Friday's show. The budget surplus, the excess surplus we have in the state of Georgia now, $14.6 billion, which is phenomenal, right? Georgia's economic engine is humming. It's doing well. But I would imagine politicians are looking at that budget like, well, why do we need to pay such high income tax, or why do we need to pay such high property tax when we are already gushing with funds? I would imagine that surplus might play into this political scheme as well.
Yeah, and look, that's such a great point, and it's such a dichotomy between how well our state is being run thanks to conservative leadership under Governor Kemp and in the General Assembly with Lieutenant Governor and Speaker of the House John Burns. But that's such that contrast between what is going on in Washington. Like they can't even figure out how to solve anything, pass a budget, huge deficits. But yeah, that will be instrumental next session, Mark. You talked about the $14.6 billion surplus. The governor is going to be the ultimate decider. He gets to set what money will be recognized and able to be used. Certainly, we've lowered the state income tax over the past few years. I imagine there will be some acceleration on that next legislative session. But he may also use those funds for infrastructure projects or for other economic development
Sure.
or lots of different things where we can infuse that into the economy. But again, it's just such a stark contrast to how well this state is being run and how poorly things are going in Washington, D.C.
I'm glad you brought that up. Day 22, government shutdown. Is either side going to break on this? Or are we're just locked and loaded for who knows how long?
I think it's look. I think the rubber is going to start meeting the road. You guys have mentioned astutely the longer delays that we're starting to see at Hartsfield, where the TSA. I was there on Sunday. It was starting to get slower. You could see the TSA agents start to get a little, more frustrated that they are going without a paycheck. And look, the thing there is like they are getting an IOU essentially from the federal government, but their mortgage doesn't get an IOU.
Yeah.
Their car payment doesn't get an IOU. So when you start to see that trickle down effect on those frontline, military folks, TSA folks, that's going to start to put a lot of downward pressure on these legislators in Washington to act. I will be surprised if there is not some sort of resolution in sight in the next week. I think what they will probably ultimately do is off-ramp these subsidies for potentially for like 6 months to kick the can down the road and to provide some relief so that they can get the government back open. But the ultimate long-term question, Mark, is this healthcare debate. Obamacare, this Affordable Care Act, it's a disaster. It is in a death spiral. These subsidies are just propping up a problem that is continuing to brew and a massive, massive deficit that is continuing to grow. Republicans need to come with some sort of solution,
a new plan,
an alternative, and a new plan to healthcare in this country.
2 weeks. 2 weeks away. We'll tell you about the new plan. You were off sick last week, so I've been sitting this in my pocket. I got a hypothesis. I floated it past Erickson. Governor Kemp continuing his overseas tour, the international business ties. Is there any scenario, political analyst Stephen Lawson, that the next Secretary of State of the United States could be Governor Brian Kemp? Is he building up Secretary of State bona fides, perhaps?
Well, that's going to require Marco Rubio to get rid of one of his 5 job titles. So,
well, he might run on a Rubio Vance ticket, perhaps, if that's successful.
Look, anything is. Look, I think the sky's the limit for Brian Kemp. I mean, I think he's going to have a lot of options. I think, certainly he is all behind Derek Dooley. I think that's probably front and center on his mind right now. But yeah, looking ahead to 2028, I think if he plays his cards right, the sky is the limit, and he could be a cabinet secretary. He could decide that he wants to run for Senate here in 2028. He could decide he wants to run for president. He could decide he wants to go in the private sector and make some money.
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State. So if that happens, you heard it here first from Mark Arum on the Mark Arum Show.
There you go. Listen, he's got all these international contacts now, and obviously running a successful economic state. I don't know. I thought it was a thing. Relatedly, have you watched The Diplomat yet?
I have not.
Oh,
it's
my
on my
God.
list.
That's your homework tonight.
I'm on it.
Season 3 just dropped. I want you to binge watch till next week. We can discuss.
It's my homework.
The Diplomat. Political analyst Stephen Lawson. All things online at Dentons.com. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.